Good morning. Do you have my, can you all hear me? Well, good, clear enough. First of all, my name is Vin Lu, in case some of you don't know who I am. I am a board director for the Multicultural Center of Marine with the building you're in now. So I want to welcome you. The program is supposed to start at 11, but we are 15 minutes kind of late. And one thing really surprised me because the Vietnamese group showed up early, like 10:30. It's like, we have an old saying, you're not late, you're not Vietnamese. So I don't know how true that will be. I'm gonna change that from now on, I guess. Anyway, so I kind of give you a housekeeping rule. Number one, we have the restroom in the back. They're all gender. Make sure you lock your room when you go in there. And secondly, we have an art gallery. We recently have a grant to do a BIPOC artist promotion. So we have been invited so many BIPOC, which is, if you don't know what BIPOC stands for, I can tell you, Black, Indigenous, People of Color. That's the BIPOC stand for. So we give them a small grant. That's all the result of what they did with the art. After the meeting, you're welcome to check around, and you will see my picture somewhere in the on the wall. Anyway, so I have so many rules, but today I give you the only one rule. Please turn your cell phone on the vibration mode. Seems like you all cooperate. Good. I get my job done. So I'm going to introduce you today. We have our moderator, Marie. We used to call her Mo. I don't know why I like Marie. M-O. Mo. Thank you.
Hi everybody. Uncle Vin, you went out of order, so I'm actually going to go with Emily Wu, our president of Asian American Alliance of Marin, to really frame and thank all those who put this amazing event together. So I'm actually going to pass the mic to Emily before we start our event.
Here to do my job. In the middle. Hi everybody, I'm Emily Wu. I'm here to acknowledge, thank you. I'm not doing much really. I'm not acknowledging the co-sponsors. The Marin Asian Advocacy Project puts this together, and then the co-sponsors are Asian American Alliance Marin, Engaged Buddhist Alliance, Enlightened Buddhist Center of Marin County, and Multicultural Center of Marin. This is what I'm doing, that's why I let you know. Getting.
Hi everybody. Round of applause for Uncle Vin as well as Emily. Can everybody hear me? Fantastic. The moment you're not able to hear myself or our awesome speakers, please let us know. We want to make sure that everyone is able to hear it. And also, I just want to say hi to those who are participating in our live stream via the Viet Radio Facebook page. So after today, if you have friends who were unable to attend, that's okay. We have the live stream video as well as a YouTube link that would be happily shared out to all of you. All right? My name is Mo Dinyava Marsh, and I am today's moderator, but I am also a proud member of the Asian American Alliance of Marin board, as well as in my daytime job, I am the director of whole family and community services at Community Action Marin, a nonprofit based here in San Rafael. And the mission of Community Action Marin is really to surround families with resources to help them move from crisis to thriving. And so it's really an honor and a pleasure to be with all of you here, whether it be virtually or in person, really talking about a very important issue that's not really talked about openly in our Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities. Growing up Filipina American of two nurses, and I am the failed dream because I am not a nurse, but it was really hard to connect with my parents who immigrated, and then how to be able to navigate that as someone who was born in Hawaii and then having those complex issues, right? And so I share a little bit about that because today these amazing speakers are going to talk about their lived experience. They're going to talk about their professional experience, their spiritual experience, but also help to inspire us to see how we can take action in our personal lives, how we can take action in our professional lives as advocates and change makers to be ambassadors of it's okay to talk about our mental health, period. And so what a wonderful way to close out May, since it is Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander Celebration Month, as well as Mental Health Awareness Month. So with that, we're gonna roll into introductions of our speakers. Today's format, I just wanted to frame it out, is that each speaker will have about 15 minutes each sharing their experiences, and then we'll save our collective question and answers at the end. And then at 12:30 p.m., hopefully with the timing, right? You know, we have ebbs and flows, is that we'll be able to start lunch together, and you'll be able to continue personal discussions at your lunch table. Any questions from the crowd? Are we feeling good? Excellent. All right. With that, I'm going to roll into introductions. I'm going to start from the end, moving forward. I was going to say left to right, but I'm not really good with direction. Our first speaker today is Venerable Dahong, is a PhD in Buddhist Studies from the University of the West, where he is currently an adjunct professor. He is one of the co-founders of the Engaged Buddhist Alliance and has volunteered in several state prisons in California, teaching mindfulness, meditation, and Buddhist psychology since 2013. Venerable Dahong has been a Buddhist monk since 2006 in the Vietnamese and Chinese Pure Land tradition. He was also ordained in the Burmese Theravada tradition in the Mahasi lineage in 2014. Let's give a round warm of applause for Venerable Dahong. Our second speaker, as an AAPI or Asian American Pacific Islander and mental health advocate who wears many hats, ironically not wearing a hat today, is Miss Jamie Yan Farrow, who has made significant contributions for the Marin community through her volunteer work and leadership roles in various programs and county initiatives, such as the MSA, which stands for Mental Health Services Act, Advisory Committee, and Recovery Change Team. The core of her work is promoting cultural humility and meeting people where they are. In 2021, Ms. Yan Farrow received a commendation from the Marin County Board of Supervisors for her volunteer role as a BIPOC peer and community advocate, which means is that she's taking her lived experience and bridging those with their lived experiences to be advocates for change around mental health. Also, she was awarded in the Celebrating and the Uncelebrated ceremony for her service from the Behavioral Health and Recovery Services, also known as BHRS team, in 2019. Let's give a round warm of applause for Ms. Jamie Yan Farrow. And finally, our last speaker is Ms. Mai McGuire Tran. She is a bilingual and bicultural mental health clinical specialist working with the Vietnamese population in our neighboring Contra Costa County for 15 years, serving 4 generations in the Vietnamese community. Ms. McGuire Tran dedicates her heart and effort in serving the Vietnamese community who experience and encounter with mental health issues within themselves and their loved ones. As an immigrant from Vietnam herself, Ms. McGuire Tran combines her own life experiences and professional knowledge to assist her clients to recognize early signs of mental health in themselves and their family members. Let's give another round warm of applause for Ms. McGuire Tran. Amazing. So far, so good, right? I'm Filipino, I'm keeping everything on time, that's great. With that, Venerable Dahong has slides. We apologize in advance, we don't have a larger screen, but please know, do you think you're gonna be able to make these slides available, Venerable Dahong? Great. So we will make sure those that are in attendance today will have access to the slides, but just wanted to note, we recognize how tiny this font is, and we recognize how small this screen is. With that, we will start with Venerable Dahong.
Good morning. Thank you everyone for coming here and listen. You guys make me nervous. I'd rather go inside maximum security prison and I feel at home and safe. So anyway, Thank you for coming. I have the slides here, and if you guys want them, these are all credited. You know, that if you need them, you can get it from Mr. Trump. Yeah, I can send it to you. So my talk is going to be about intergenerational trauma, just because of the experiences that most of us have, and a bit of the fact I'm not a mental health specialist, but I live in the East Asian culture as well as the Southeast Asian culture. Being Chinese, born in Vietnam, I'm more like the bridge in between the two different cultures. So I can understand both. So I will talk about the reasons why we Asian Americans, we don't go to mental health. We also don't talk about death. You know, like, no, you know. So, and then lastly, I'll probably give you some examples of why some of the Asian incarcerated men and women, why their parents don't tell their relatives that, oh, you know, my kids are not in prison. You will see. So that's the outline. This is the sheet for the adverse childhood experiences. You can Google it and get your score. If you have a 4 and up, chances are you're going to have some form of physical and mental health. My score is 8, so you guys know. And I'm still sitting here. And again, I'm not an expert in trauma, but these are the issues that I went through. The first 2 I don't remember quite clearly. 5 years old, I ran away. You guys know of the Vietnam War. 5 years old, in Saigon. My family and I, we were running away from the US bombing every night, the Tet Offensive, 1968. And growing up, I didn't know what times my dad would come home drunk. He would scream and beat the crap out of me. I was only, 14. And not only that, he came home drunk, I had to help him get his clothes off, help him, escort him upstairs to go to bed. And if he threw up, I had to clean it up, and also I had to put him to sleep for 4 years. So I cried every 2 or 3 times a week. And I always question, like, was he my father? You know. So that, and then luckily, sometime in September of '81, I got on a boat. I was one of the boat people in 1981. I spent 7 days, 6 nights, and I survived on the Pacific Ocean with just 3 spoons of water a day, and it was like 100 pounds when we were rescued in Malaysia. 10 months in the refugee camp, when I came to the Cleveland, Ohio. So it's, with $10, and I survived since then. So these are the trauma that I went through, and I survived death. I think that was 5 times, right? Guess what? This was August 24th. I was on the highway. The highway stopped. This big van crashed right into me. And you saw the insurance agent. She said, "Oh, your car is total." Usually they would come and inspect it, but no. And I have not taken any medication. The reason I bring this up, because this is trauma. Or if you witness it, it is also trauma. So don't overlook it. A friend of mine, his wife was also involved a minor incident, and she went to see a doctor for pain medication. Guess what? She was addicted to opium. She died April 12th, 44 years old. So, these are the issue of trauma that can cause us to happen. So these are the symptoms. You can also Google this as well. These are the issue with people. This is the health risk behavior and the symptoms. And these are the long-term consequences. Suffering from childhood trauma. And homelessness and or other behaviors. These are the social issues. I'm sorry that I have to go fast. And if you live in a poor neighborhood, let's say if you live in Skid Row, so it's not just one ACEist, it's a pair, because when you live in a poor neighborhood, you have the worst of the educational policy, you have the worst of the economic as well as social policies. So think of someone with, as a kid, it's like a tree, and then you're surrounded by the violence, by all the worst policy that the state and the federal government that did not help. And it's easy to see, go to Oakland, go to San Jose, go to LA, Skid Row. This is what it is. This is the issue in our society. As great as we claim we are, but these are the issues. So I want to start with the definition of trauma. Trauma is an actual or threatened death or serious injury or sexual violence. I highly recommend that you guys get this book, but I'm just giving you guys the definition of what trauma is, and I'll skip this. These are different types of traumas that one suffers. And this is an excellent book that everyone should read. There is a Chinese translation of this as well, but it's only available in Taiwan. But if you know people who know of other languages, I highly recommend that you guys ask them to translate, because this is one of the best books and everyone should read. Even if you don't suffer trauma, chances are you're going to run into people or your relatives, or if you might marry someone who also suffered trauma. I can guarantee you. So basically what this book does is that it explores how trauma affects the body, the mind, and your emotions. And he used examples of humans and dogs. Like, why is it that even for dogs, when they were abused by their owners, they still did not run away? Or for women who suffer abuse by their partner or husbands or boyfriends, they still couldn't get away. They still did not want to get away. And this is a serious problem. And not to mention that when you suffer trauma, when you give birth to kids, for women, your kids will suffer the DNA from you. And one of the there are three revenues to healing, meaning that to process and heal from it is to talk about it. If you don't talk about it, you will not process, you will not understand, and you will not heal. You can heal from trauma. It doesn't mean that your body will heal from the physical abuse or sexual abuse, but at least you can be at peace with it. You can feel calm and peaceful living with your past trauma. And that's by talking about it. Every person that I met, that I know, I told them what happened to me. And this is from I will show you the other books too. They also said communication is the key to addressing and healing from your trauma. And how do you recover from that? Guess what? Mindfulness practice. Why do I I'm not bringing the religion, the rituals of Buddhism into the prison. I'm bringing the practice, the Buddha's teaching, and the mindfulness practice and other Buddhist practices that can help this population, because this population suffer pretty much all kinds of trauma even on a daily basis. Acupuncture works. I have been ever since my accident. Okay. Then the second book, which I didn't bring, is what we call The Deepest Well by Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, who is California Surgeon General. And AIDS affects all aspects of a human being, whether you are poor or rich. She did a study on the middle class white kids who suffer AIDS. Guess what? As they get older, they suffer physical or mental illness, and no one is exempt from it. The thing is, sometimes when it happens so young, when you were 2 or 3 or 4, you don't remember. But then your body reacts to certain things, certain sounds, certain triggers. That's how you know that that was trauma. But you need to be able, hopefully, if your parents were around, they could tell you. Otherwise, you may not know, but you know that those are the types. That's what we call living in the present moment. But here's the problem. People suffer from trauma, they cannot stay in the present moment. And I will explain to you why. So this is the next book that I highly recommend that you guys get it. And according to Dr. Gabor Mate, trauma is not what happened to you, it's what happened inside you. That's why I use the example of running. Boom, the force stay in your body. We could not shake it up. Animals can shake them up. We humans can. And so like constantly, as you get older, it's going to get worse because your body is getting weaker and aging. Guess what? You feel all kinds of pain and you don't know what. And the problem is, even in America, we don't talk about trauma. Even in medical field, again, the path to illness is to be in the present moment. The problem is when we suffer from trauma, we cannot because we have the our body suffer the PTSD. I only have 5 minutes and I I didn't wake up. Anyway, the reason that my father abused me was he was born in China in 1935. By the time he was an orphan, he was 6 years old, he became an orphan. He was raised by his grandma, and then he escaped to Vietnam. He started to drink every day. So between him and I suffered the intergenerational trauma. And if you use Vietnam as a country, because that's I know, look at Vietnam before 1975, it was involved with the US government. Before that, the Japanese. Before that, the French. Before that, China. Thousands of years. That's why you can see how people behave or the way that they think. It's all from the trauma of the world. So basically, intergenerational trauma is that someone experienced traumatic experience literally because of your parents, or you inherit the DNA from your parents. Look at all the war that we involve. The people in those wars, they also suffer trauma. You know, the Japanese internment, right, that we have in America, that is also trauma. Another way that we pass trauma is because of our philosophy. And I want to bring your attention to Confucianism. Confucianism was written in the 6th century BCE, during the time of the Buddha. And it was written to keep basically law and order between the king and his officials, between the husband and wife. What it is about is what? Obedience. It was good at the time, but guess what? We live with it as though it's normal, but it's not normal. And then, why do I tell you guys? But we don't take care of our mental health. If someone upsets you, especially, someone in the street, it doesn't matter, but your family, your relatives, that's the worst mental suffering that you have, what we call in Buddhist term, mental affliction. But we put up with it. What about by your spouse, by your kids, right? But we don't talk about it. So think about that. We spend so, especially in America, right? We have this issue. We have high standard of personal hygiene, right? Physical hygiene. But how about your mental hygiene? So I just want to throw this out. I just came up with this, I think, because I gave a talk in Cantonese on Buddhism, and I posed this question to the people too. I have a definition of the mind because we're talking about mental. From the Buddhist perspective, our mind is this formless continuum that functions to perceive and understand object. Here it means data and information. And we carry on a regular basis, and we are not taking time without meditating. Give me a moment. Okay, yeah, I will wrap this up, but the one thing, I'll talk about shame and here in the slide too that you guys can wrap up. But one thing, just because of my volunteer work in the state prison, I just wrote this out just because Mr. Strand asked me to, is that in California prisons, they only hire chaplains for the 5 religions, but they don't hire Buddhist chaplains just because the decision was made by California that hey, because these are the most people who practice these religions, so we don't have to hire the other 5, the Buddhists or other religions. So that's the issue. But the one that I missed is, the faith saving, the losing faith or having faith, meaning that if your kid's doing something wrong, we're like, oh no, that's not my kids, right? Because I would lose faith, or because of our sense of ego. But if my kids doing well, oh, my kids went to Stanford, you know, like, but everything else, no, it did not happen, not to my kids. And that's the issue with the Asian.
Stand before you humbly as an Asian person, Southeast Asian, born and raised in Malaysia. I hope everyone knows from Malaysia. I'm just doing a quiz. Anyway, I come before you today to share with you, just enhancing what Reverend Dong has said. I love what he said. I think I undergo as a young person too. I come from a family, reputable family, that reputation is the first thing. You know, being a person Asian, and you want to be able to live up to your family name, where, you know, you don't have an identity. Because the parents are, like the father especially, is a patriarch of the family. In my culture, my grandfather is a patriarch. So when he speaks, everyone went silent. So it's the culture that we inherit, the subculture. And that makes us feel, you know, as a young person, a young girl, we have no voice. We are being silenced. Over the years of subserviency, being a person who, you know, gone through a lot of trauma to myself as a young person, but never have a words for it. So as a result, we internalize our trauma. We put it all in. Oh, when I remember when I was a young baby, I had a trauma. I was in my mama's tummy for 21 hours. I couldn't come out. And years later, I keep on having this notion of doing this. I don't know why. But when I came to US, I understand this is me trying to come out from the umbilical cord, trying to come out into the world. But yet I internalize it. And coming to the world with abuse, but nobody knows about it. Because we're told not to say anything. What you go through, take it in. And when I had my suicide ideation, when I harmed myself, I was in the hospital. I was actually thinking that I'm not able to say. It's only when I came to this country as an immigrant, a religious worker, I've been given the opportunity to work with a lot of communities who are different from mine. I noticed that we all have the same suffering. Some of us, we know we are suffering, we're lucky. But a lot of us, we are with our own internal struggles. So wherever we go, we bring it to be part of ourselves, you know. And coming here, when I first met my husband, it's a totally different culture. His wife, I'm Asian. Not knowing about culture, just like this Reverend say, physical health, we go to the doctor, we fix it, right? But when we talk about mental health, a lot of times, for our culture, Asian person, we don't really talk about it. Oh, tomorrow you'll be better, you'll be fine. Is it really? Does it go away? But yet this is what we've been told. The taboo of speaking out. We can't speak because our parents say, you're supposed to be quiet here now. But I'm in pain, right? So just take it all in. So, and then when you go down to places that you see other people have just like you, like when I arrive here into the West, hey, I'm not alone. I see people beginning to speak up. And thus, I joined the Behavioral Health Recovery Services in Marin County. I volunteered with them for 5 years. And my role is actually to be a peer and community advocate. Peer, meaning that I have lived experience. I share of my internal struggles too. Because through my accident, I have my PTSD, I have my anxiety, but that doesn't mean that, I'm okay. I need to take care of myself. Different states and also, not states, in a webinar and also in person to share about this, because I think it starts with me. If I feel that I can share this, I hope that we can bring about more understanding and conversation that's much needed. And I know sometimes you say, oh, you know, I've been there, I've been have training with the county, 4 hours of cultural competence. Yes, that's good. But cultural humility takes a longer time to build. Every day, it's not like about, there's actually a fix to it. So if you want to address issues like that, start with yourself. That's why I implore people who are like myself, Asian community, just have a cup of tea with me, talk to me. And maybe then you can understand there are always options. And nobody here should be in silence because you think that, oh, you know, this is actually forbidden. But you have to know what works for you, what is important to you, current to the future. Because the future has not arrived yet. You create your own self. Mindfulness training, like what Reverend said, is something we can incorporate. We can actually put into our being to help us to have a better, fuller life, a whole life. So, time out. I'm playing with her more. But anyway, I just want to share that I've gone through myself, so I know the first-hand experience of what mental health is, and also being a person who, struggles because of my cultural identity. I'm here to work with you to destigmatize the process of cultural stigma. And I know, and I'm acutely aware that a lot of us here, first language not English. Me, myself too. So I know how struggling it is to be able to talk. But I'm sure we can find a way we can understand each other and have some conversation. So I think that speaks about me, and I'm open to take questions and help us on the journey. Thank you.
No, thank you, Jamie. Another round warm of applause for Jamie and for. And finally, our last speaker, and then again, we will take questions afterwards. And I really thank you for all your patience. I'm just trying to keep us moving on time. So go right ahead.
Good morning. Well, I feel like I served 4 generations of the Vietnamese in my field. And I think the next couple of generations, the last generation, they speak English. So look like my job is going to be less and less. So, I just want to clear with you, I'm not an expert. I'm just a helper, okay? So, what's the difference between the two? I don't present to you the research finding. I don't present to you the experimental study result. But what I present to you is my own experience working with them and how much I struggle to help them to get better. And I think that's very important to me. Let's go back a little bit about my English is not very good, it's not great, because I don't have formal English learning. I just study English and learn to go to school. It's a long story. So, I came from a family very, very strict. Girl, don't go to school. Formal speaking, I only have a 3rd grade education in Vietnam. When I came to this country, I only know a few words. Thank you, hello. But how do I get to this point? I believe that your thinking make who you are. Ever since I was little, I love to read, but I don't know how to read. So I fight very hard to go to school. So, make a long story short, when I met my husband, my current husband right now, I expressed to him all that. So He said, okay, go ahead and do it. I myself have mental health problem. Right now I have ADHD and I'm glad that you give time on me because the topic with 2 minutes, I can expect it out in 2 hours, so make sure I stop. So I'm here to share with you what I learned. I'm not teaching you anything, okay? I'm just sharing. And my client is limited to the Vietnamese people I work with, okay? So when I struggle in my graduate school, this professor, I don't do very well from the beginning. In graduate school, you have to get B in order to stay. Well, at the beginning, she saw me do not so well, so she counseled me and talked to me, and she said, Mai, I'm going to fail you because you don't have enough academic, you don't pass your multiple choice and all that stuff. So I just kind of like so sad because without this degree, I cannot help people out there. So I poured out all my story to her from the beginning to now. And her name is Dr. Smith. Right before I graduated, she had a heart attack and died. So in the memory of her, I wrote a speech and I submitted to my department, the counseling department, because I want to talk about her. I want to appreciate it. So, but I remember very well, she told me, she said, Mai, I feel sorry for you because later on when you go out there and work in field, you can compete with those who speak perfectly English. But I'm going to tell you, you're going to use your life experience, you're going to use your struggle and combine with your professional thing. You do a wonderful job. So I take that advice with me and I go along and do my work. But think about in mental health, especially youth therapy, there's two things that I keep in mind. Compassion, you need that. You all know that, right? And the second thing is counter-transfer. Counter-transfer, you have to be very careful. So before when I go up and do this speech and I talk to my supervisor, so she gave me this reading, that sympathy versus empathy. So empathy is good, but it's just like the door swing both ways. If you don't be careful, it's going to slap you right on the face. And I give you an example. While I would finish school and I do the intern and I work at the called women's shelter. And I have this domestic violence case. And I've been with her for a couple of months. And then one day she come in, she have no more fun tea left. And so we always begin it out, how are you, right? And then I'm curious, she kept hiding. And I say, what happened to your tea? And she told me that her husband took a screwdriver and knocked it off. I went straight into disassociate. And just like he said, because of the drama, I have so much drama in my life, but that is one of them. I will take me all day to sit here and tell you the whole story, but that's why empathy is good because you can feel what the client feels so you can help better, but you got to be very careful. Back then, I don't have much experience, even though I do a lot of therapy work with my own therapy thing, but at that moment, I disassociated. I overcome my experience, I overcome all that stuff until 2017, not too long ago, I relapsed. Something dramatically that I went back into my depression. And they diagnosed me with a new way, CPTSD. I spent 10 months in therapy with a lot of support from my husband and friend, I'm well again. But just like Dr. Hong said, talk about that, it helped. I told my client, you kept everything just like you put the air in the balloon. If you don't let it out, what happened? You see, Vietnamese people I work with don't have much education, they're very low education. So when I work with them, I don't use big words. I use a simple term, I use a simple metaphor. And they don't believe in therapy. In fact, they don't seek help. They don't want to help. And then we say, if we want to know something about the person, we ask, right? But how can you know when they don't talk to you? They don't want to talk. I have a client who have court order, sent him in for 52 weeks. I sit with him almost 3 months. Nothing. And I explained it to him, if you don't talk to me, I cannot help, but I have to make a report. So what do I do when you sit with a person for 50 minutes in 1 hour? Can you imagine how you deal with your anxiety? So I have to come up with everything. I read him a story, I read him a poem, I did all kind of things. Still won't work. So I'm lucky one day my husband telling me a joke, and it fit pretty well in that. So I don't know what happened, but I decided to tell him a joke. And I saw his mouth lip a little bit. And the second part of the joke, he break out laughing. That's my number one success. I help him get SSI, I help him get housing, I get him a lot of things done. So doing a therapy with Vietnamese is very, very difficult. So my job, oh by the way, I work in San Pablo, and San Pablo is the hometown of Livestream. Livestream is the movie star of Heaven and Earth. And I was Arctic in that movie too, but I felt all of a sudden tell me, cut. Anyway, so working with Vietnamese people is very, very difficult because they don't have a knowledge of understand how important it is. So I have to come up with all kind of ways to tell them, like medication, they don't want to take medication. So I told them, I say, if you got a headache, you need a medication to take it. Mental health is the same thing. I have another client that, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around, but I'm trying to pick up the case. I have a 26 years old when his youngest brother died in his arm by a gunshot in Oakland. His mother, I treat his mother for depression, but when I Contra Costa, they allow me to do home visit, they allow me to do therapy in their home, they allow me a freedom of do a lot of things. So when I came to his home, and I realized that I encouraged him to seek help. So he listened, and we worked it out thing, and now he married and have 2 kids and all that. I have older generation, the one I have right now is 102 years old. And then I have few more older, but that generation, it kind of like slowly go away. And the next generation, I have it like my age or a little bit older. I have 86 years old, 84 years old. And then I have younger generation, and then the youngest one who get involved in a lot of legal, it's all kind of problem, but they don't think it's a mental health problem. So my job is picking out the thing and ask them a question and encourage them to recognize that. And trust me, it's not the easy thing to do. But just like I say, we have to do our best. And just like Dr. Hong said, in Vietnamese, there's a word say, Xấu che tốt khỏe, meaning you hide everything about bad thing and you brag about the good thing, like my daughter is the doctor, my son is the dentist and all that. But they won't tell about how their husband beat them up. So I'm trying to focus on your thinking is important. How you think that make who you are. What does that mean? Just like she said. Think, when I was young, I'm thinking, why is this? Why girl is less value than boy? Why girl is the outsider? I challenged my father. I say, I'm not an outsider. I'm your daughter. I got your blood. So I'm the black sheep in the family. I'm the only girl that talked back to my father out of 9 children that he had. So, lot of challenge. I read your writing technique. A lot of challenge for Vietnamese. So, but important thing is check with them about their thinking. Second them on acceptance. Acceptance, there are 2 things. Acceptance, you have an illness. Acceptance, the sick treatment is different than acceptance. It is normal to beat up by your husband. It is normal to have traumatized. It is normal to watch your brother die in front of you. So that's why helping them accept the illness very, very difficult because they accept everything as normal, myth and normal. So I'm focusing on all that thing that I'm trying to work with them. I got all kind of things, but let me tell you, I have few cases of success. I've been 15 years in Contra Costa County. The success case I have, I can count it on my fingers. And do I have a failure? Yes, I have a failure. My lady client hung herself. And my other client have success. During the time that I was off to this depression for 10 months, nobody followed up with this client. She ended up hurting herself. However, she lucky. So she got caught by her sibling. But now instead of focus on treatment, she focused on gamble. So when I watch those cases that I'm not success, I ask the Lord, I say, okay, Lord, I'm sorry, I believe in God. I ask the Lord to watch over them because there's not much I can do. So every time I come in a session with a client or go visit them, I say, Lord, come with me. Show me how to help them. So it is sad, but I have to make sure that I separate that. And it's not easy. I'm still going to therapy, and it costs a lot of money out there, while we do the work we provide is free. They didn't realize that. So please, if you ever work with the Vietnamese people, just sit with them, accept them for who they are. And I think when I'm going to close it, my close-up statement is, although reading about culture of the Vietnamese population and attending seminar like this one could help gain knowledge, treating Vietnamese with mental health. But keep in mind, they are not one size fits all. So treat those Vietnamese individually for who they are with their illness, because they may have same diagnosis, but they have a different response and different understanding. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening.
Well, looky here, 12:15, look at us. Again, another warm round of applause for our speakers today. I fully acknowledge we have 2 microphones, so I'm going to keep one microphone up here. But at this point in time, if anyone has a question, and I want to also encourage, if English is not your first language, please feel free to ask your question in a language that you're most comfortable with. I'm pretty sure we have some translators here. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask the panel? And I will come to you, and you can ask in the microphone. Yes?
How do you begin to get this consumer friend to open up and start talking about?
Just like I say, I sit with them, I met them where they are, and then I just support them. I say, I'm here. When you're ready, you let me know. And just like I say with that gentleman that I work with, he won't say a word. He just sit there and stare at that. It's so uncomfortable. And just like I say, I do all kind of things. And when I finished that session with him, and I ran and told my supervisor that I told my client a joke, and he knows that I always like dirty joke. And he said, don't tell me. I say, oh, no. I tell him a good joke. And so, it is very difficult. You just be there and you talk to them. Sometimes like I have one client that I'm successful with. She only have 8 months study in Vietnamese. She not any knowledge. But when I talk to her, I talk about her grocery. Just listen to her story, and once in a while I will put in my knowledge in there and just encourage her to see things. Well, she ended up divorcing her husband. I'm so sorry. But she ended up learning a lot how to support herself, how to believe in herself, how to believe that she is not deserve of his emotional and physical abuse. So it's not an easy thing to do, but if you have a heart for them, I'm pretty sure that you will find a moment. Conversation. When I do assessment, I don't do formal assessment. I do informal. I do conversation. That's why my assessment, it takes so long more than other people at my work. Did that answer you?
Awesome. And if you have, it helps to also direct your question to the speaker, or if it's to all of them. Yes, I see your hand.
Yes, I have the quick question and very short comments about the presentation. Because 3 of you are Vietnamese. You know not Vietnamese, okay. But Asian anyway, right? So Malaysian. So if because of this is the language problem. In terms of this morning, we have 2 big terminology, that's trauma and PTSD, right? And how do you translate into Vietnamese trauma? And how do you translate into Vietnamese PTSD? That's post-traumatic stress disorder. And I tried several times to translate it, but I don't think I am success about it. So the master home, yeah, you may make translation for me.
I only finished 9th grade in Vietnam. I think the term trauma is called sang chấn tâm lý. And then the PTSD is hậu sang chấn tâm chịu trấn hậu sang chấn tâm lý. That's what I found. I actually tomorrow I'm going to give a talk a little bit on that at the temple. So it's sang chấn tâm lý, and then chịu trấn hậu sang chấn tâm lý. That's the PTSD.
Yeah, that's a good translation, but the common translation, but that is Sino-Vietnamese, not the pure Vietnamese. So it's very hard to understand, but it takes a long time to make a translation. And I just very short comment, because maybe I'm most senior in this room. I'm 78 years old. And I will just share some of my experience. I work for the County of Sacramento for 20 years about I'm emergency response of CPS, Children Response Emergency Response. So I always face with the reality in the field. And if you work in the fields of giant community, and you know that. And this morning we mentioned two big things. That's trauma and PTSD. And what's different between trauma and PTSD, especially to the Vietnamese. In fact, trauma is something happened on the scene. And like the soldier and in the battlefield, they have the trauma right in the battlefield. But PTSD is something happened 20 years later. As I work with a lot of Vietnamese parents and children, something happened by the time during the war, on the way escaping from Vietnam for America, and they suffer a lot of things, but on the scene, they just have trauma. But after that, like the American soldiers, and they experience something very painful, very depressed after 20 years. So PTSD is something happened later, and trauma something happened right on the scene. And how to cure the problem? The problem is very, very serious. So as you know, the PTSD is happened, and the psychologists, they know that in 1980, after Vietnam War. Before that, they don't have the PTSD syndrome at all. But I know that there's no time, so I just put the question that now, about 5 or 10 years ago, Asian children, the rate, I don't know how about the Asian community, but in the Vietnamese community, the rate of the suicidal kids very high in Vietnamese community, especially in the area like Bonsa, Santa Ana, the rate about 8%. And now, 10 years later, suicidal situation is less. But you know, there's another problem. What the problem? That's estrangement of the parents. A lot of kids now, Asian kids, they estrange from the parent. They run away. They don't accept the family value system anymore. What happened? What from trauma and PTSD to the Vietnamese and Asian situation creates that issue, that problem. This is a big issue, so we don't have time, but to my experience working with 20 years with the CPS, with Children Protective Services in the Vietnamese and Asian community, I think that we still face very serious problem. So the question, I know that because today we just have very limited time, so please open it, and yes, please.
Can I share something with you? You know, I just want to let you know there are services available for the community. So if you actually, like Marin County itself have resources about suicide prevention. They are willing to do a collaboration. So sometimes by being on the meeting, you understand what's available. And maybe we can also, if those who are interested, have it translated into Vietnamese to help. Yeah. Maybe later we can talk more about it, because I think we have something else.
No, actually, you have a new moderator. The old one can run for another meeting. Anyway, before I bring you out, because I like to tell you, mental health definition in Vietnamese depends who you're asking. Many years back when I was in UCSF, and one of the mental health professionals approaching me, say, Vin, do you have the Vietnamese people doing well? Their mental state good? I said, no, they seem like they're pretty cool. I don't see anybody yelling on the street, screaming, or acting out. The definition at the time I understand is the mental health when you have to acting out, you're screaming on the street, you're hurting someone, you're acting out in general. But we never thought about depression, isolation, and stress as mental health. So I give you the mental health definition. And also I like to appreciate all your attention because I never seen a group so quiet, listen to all the speaker, never have any noise, and it's my second surprise for today. Anyway, so we have a very delicious vegetarian lunch to share with you today. So I like you to take your time to enjoy those lunch and come back to the table so we can start a Q&A question continue. How's that sound? Good? Everybody vote for that? Okay, please, light up. Oh, you have a question?
Hi everybody. I'm Mary Lisa and I'm part of the advocacy team in Marin City and part of the peer support recovery change team that Jamie is a part of. And as I'm listening, I hear a lot of talk about no medicine and talking and listening, and I just want to invite anybody who has family members that are suffering with mental illness. Part of the National Alliance of Mental Illness has started family support groups in the Canal area and Marin City. So if you have family members that suffer with mental illness and just want to talk, just like everybody is saying, and just get some healing, we are at First Missionary Baptist Church in Marin City, and you're welcome, anybody is welcome to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So say your question while you bring your food back to the table so we can entertain your Q&A. We have some diverse culture here based on a Caucasian culture. I think lady go first for the food. But since we have diverse, in our culture, elderly go first. So maybe we have elderly waving hand back there. Professor Jin Chen, please start the line. Thank you.
Is that your battery? Is that your battery?
Where is that? Battery?
Battery, yeah.
Oh, batteries. Oh, there might be
Yeah.
I don't know who they are. Hey, you're Emily, right? I'm Javier. Nice to meet you.
In face.
In face, yeah. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, no. That's great.
Okay.
Seniors.
Yeah. That's alright. That's alright. Yeah, I'm not judging. But yeah, stream stuff's been going well. We're all good to go.
When I see that choir is also another recording, so that's great. Because I'm thinking, maybe we need to get the points right.
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to see, I think, from all sides.
Yeah. No, it's great that you're good at streaming. So
Well,
that's another.
What do you teach at the Dominican?
Religion, social justice, also part of the service learning program, something around.
How long have you been a professor over there?
Yeah, I'm good around. Yeah, so I mean, I might come back to you with questions about you.
Yeah, let's talk.
Because I do have students.
Students would love to what's going on. And I'd love to connect more with the mental health resources.
But yeah, and then the other thing I was thinking about is we are trying to work with some of the
Oh yeah,
on
yeah.
creating some programming with them. So I don't know how much you already work with them.
I'm pretty, I've been pretty, I'm starting to build that relationship with them too. I know a couple people already. Yeah, so if you need any connections, I can
Yeah,
help.
because well, we have a meeting with the principal,
Joe? Yeah.
Joe, and then we're trying to see what
Let's
we
move
can
this.
Oh, good. I mean, Joe's basically like
Yeah, that's our priority. I think we would work really well. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. You had a chance to look at the when during the event last year?
So the first time we have the AAPI, it's all entertainment. People want to talk. But then the next time they have activity and entertainment. But she thinks the collective can be just left on.
I don't know. I mean,
in the corner.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that they were thinking that they would be on both sides, you know, in the room here, so you could be. But we're having entertainment up the front, so you would be maybe in a corner back here.
That's fine.
I don't know, because I'm not the committee, but you know,
The committee.
well, I was helping Emily and.
Hello everybody, have you had a chance to get a plate of food and how's the food? Is it good? Vegetarian and some chicken. So we're thinking maybe if you still have questions for our guest speakers, if maybe a line of some sort, so that we could continue with our Q&A. And because we need to end at 1, so if you still have questions for our speakers, please.
Thank you. I have a question to the speaker. Yes. During your talk, you mentioned about the intergenerational trauma, and then you mentioned about the DNA and the DNA modification is affecting the intergeneration trauma. Can you give an example?
What it means is that when anyone suffers trauma, it affects your brain. It affects your whole body. So let's say, be a man or a woman, when you get married, you have a kid, this kid's going to carry your DNA, and that is, so this kid, when he or she is born, he's going to have certain issues. There's you guys, you know the 9/11 event, right? The people, I think it was last year, a few months ago, I read a report about the people who suffer from the 9/11, when their kids also suffer the trauma because of the parents' DNA. So that I don't have it with me, but you can Google. That's the trauma, and it has been proven. Even this morning, there was on Apple News a report that anyone suffering chronic stress, it will affect your gut health. That's what it's right there. Yeah.
What shape or how are you gonna be show up for the next one?
I think it's in the biology because I don't remember affecting the kids, the biology, the body, or the brain. It was reported, so I didn't read the exact details, but it's up on the internet. Yeah.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences. That was really heartfelt and personal. And I think we connected to it at different levels. Thank you so much. I have two questions actually. One of the questions being, I think it's also piggybacking on that last question. There are generational differences between the trauma that has happened to our parents or grandparents, and it passes down culturally as well as generationally because of the environment and the conditions that we're in, and energetically as well. So my question is, how do you raise awareness to children who might be raised in those environments because of, the trauma that does get transferred from the parental trauma to the younger generation? And how do we raise awareness for the younger generation, really, to understand what the parents have gone through so they can also understand their own culture, especially being into meditation. I know that meditation is incredibly healing and helpful in many different ways. It actually changes, brain structure, neuroplasticity. So my question is, if you're in trauma and you can't be present, how do you bring someone in trauma into that? How do you guide them into meditation to allow them to keep up a practice that will help with their healing path? Especially because they cannot be present, right? So to tell someone who is in trauma that meditation, there's an increased awareness in meditation. There's apps for it, but it's so hard for someone in trauma to actually get into that meditative state. So I guess I'm asking, where do they start? What kind of resources can you give them?
In the interest of time, can I just capture all the other questions and then maybe you could take the questions you want to respond? Because we only have a couple of minutes, sorry. Do we have a lot more other questions? Okay. Sorry.
I want to thank you for inviting me today. I'm Bill Tyler, Fire Chief in Novato, and I met this morning with Jamie and her husband, and they took time to get to know me and for me to get to know them. And she shared with me the flyer last week, and then I got it on my schedule and came today. And it was very important for me to hear your experiences and to see how your community is affected by trauma. And what I want to share with you is that likewise, the fire service in Marin, California, also experiences behavioral health trauma issues on a daily basis. the firefighters that respond to 911 calls, to emergencies. It might be stabbings, shootings, drownings, people burned, terrible accidents, traffic accidents, incidents involving children, incidents involving abuse. We go into homes where there's chaos, and we try and bring, for the time that we're there, we try and bring calm to that. And responding on that maybe 20 times a day. Our firefighters in Marin County, they work 48 hours straight, and then they're off for a few days, and then they come back on. They live together. And so they've experienced, say, 20 times a day, this effect over and over and over again. And about 5 years ago, it became a conversation at a higher level, and we started to address this. We recognized firefighters we were losing more firefighters. More firefighters were dying from suicide than in fires, responding to fires or incidents. And so, as you can imagine, firefighting, like you have a culture of, not letting people know the weaknesses. Firefighters very masculine, historically masculine, and we would not seek help. You wouldn't come back to the fire station with those that you do consider your family, and you wouldn't cry. You would let people know that something bothered you, right? That was the stigma. So we've done a lot to try and break that in the last 5 years. And so we've learned that mind-body connection, that there's actually physiological chemicals inside your brain when these things happen that affect you, that is an injury. So what I want to share with you is one way that we try and connect and get over this, break the stigma, is we try not to look at this as PTSD disease, right? We look at it as an individual incident, so post-traumatic stress injury. So just as if someone goes and you break your arm, you get a cast, everybody can see that, you go to recover, and then you're back to full strength. The injuries here, you don't see. You don't see those. So if we recognize that each one of these, and we actually have policies and protocols when our crews go on certain types of calls. If you go on a child drowning, for example, the whole engine company that responds after that will put them out of service. They'll go back to the station, they'll have a debriefing, they'll talk, they'll take a shower, they'll do some exercise, they'll eat before they go back out on the next call. So we're destigmatizing this, we're recognizing it, and then realizing that we have a 30-year career of this, soldiers, a few years, right? Firefighters, 30 years of responding to this kind of trauma. So the good news is, if strong firefighters, macho, can recognize this and can want to start talking about it, then you all can too. Your communities can do that too. And it's through education and through discussion. And so I share that with you so that you know you're not alone. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I take one or two more questions, and then I want to give this back to the speakers. Do I have one or two more questions? Otherwise, we'll go back to the first questions. I know, exactly. That's why I was like, let's get back to the questions I was actually asked. But if we don't have other questions, please.
I'm going to respond to you on the best that I could, okay? So I assume you're Vietnamese. Okay. Yes, I did work with a lot of people at your parent age. They came from 1975, before the country losing to communism. They escaped. So most people come before the country fell, or educated people. And I found even with educated people, somehow deny mental health. Somehow they deny that they have emotional issues, especially men. If your father or your uncle who in the service, that they believe that they don't talk about that because those are weak, those are a woman thing. But even women don't talk about it either because the husband not allowed them to talk about it. So end up the children were the one who suffer. Children, the one who come to us for help, and I'm surprised. So what I'm trying to do is build a bridge between the parent and the children, and then teach the children how to do differently with your children. Talk. Talk bring people together. Talk not necessarily, how would you fight in Vietnam? How would you got shot in Vietnam and all that? No, not necessary. But find a way to talk to your father or your mother, and then find a way to talk to my children. My deceased husband, he served my country since 1964. And we left 1972. I married him when I was 17. I came to this country when I was 19 years old. My deceased husband never talked about that. But back then, I don't know very much about anything. But later on, when we got divorced, my daughter, we talked to him about. I told her, you see that your daddy lay? He got shot in my country. So my daughter came to him, oh, daddy, look, So he don't want to talk about that. But I encouraged my daughter, just ask him, tell me a story. So that's another thing that I told one person. She's seeking help for her grandson. Storyteller. Ask your father to tell you a story. I don't know, just like I say, it's not one size fits all. But you love your parents and you go to school here, so of course you know more than they do. Just share with them, that's all. Be there with them and love them and accept them for who they are. But talk about the medication, yes. Medication, I have a now we 82 or 84, I forgot exact age. I met him in the shop, okay, so I know he got some problem. And then later on, we went to his doctor, family doctor. So the family doctor suggested he needs to take some medication because it's getting worse. Because his nightmare get longer and longer. And he ended up becoming a grouchy person and all that. So he still don't take the medication. So I told him, I say, I call him back, even though him and I were kind of like close there. I say, bác ơi, vậy chứ, bác có bệnh, I'm sorry, I speak some Vietnamese, okay? Bác ơi, vậy chứ bác có bệnh cao huyết áp không? Yes, I do have high blood pressure. And did you take the medication? Yes, I take medicine. Okay, nhưng mà bác buồn đó, bác uống thuốc đi. When you sad, your medication will help. So those kind of things, it just encouraged little by little. And eventually, I told him, I say, try out the medication, just a little bit. If you don't like it, you can tell your doctor you don't need to. But pay attention to see how medication help you. There's nothing wrong with that. And so it is very difficult to ask them to accept the medication. Just like I say, the challenge that I play with, they accept the illness or they just accept it normal. I went to war, I fight Viet Cong, yes, I got shot and all that stuff. Yeah, maybe back then they think it's normal, but not now. It's trauma. It's trauma that he went through. So I just encourage the children, just love them, bring your children, let them talk to them, and let's see how it works. I'm not going to guarantee you it works, but why not try? Different way. Did that answer your question?
Hello. Well, when you sign up for this program, we end at 1 o'clock. So we want to keep our private to turn you loose. But before I do that, two things I forgot. Most of the time when you have a discussion group like this, we have an evaluation form in the back. But for this particular Asian culture, I don't think evaluation form work well because nobody want to hurt you. They don't tell you the truth, how bad, how good you do anyway. So I encourage you to go out and you check Asian American Alliance of Marine, the website, and put your comments and whatever you tell us, and we listen to you. Maybe we can look for more improvement next time. And also, one more thing. How many of you in here are mental health practitioners from Marin County? 1, 2. Do I have number 3? I a little bit, well, I would say disappointed, because I happen to serve on the community mental health advisory board. Many times the advisory board always ask me, how's the Asian culture toward the mental health? How they see mental health? Do they seek help? So on, so on. So I was expecting more of them attending today. So that I don't have to answer the question every time I meet with them again. They say, how's the mental health of the Asian population? So you go back, tell your colleague next time, please attend this meeting so we can share lots of stories with all. Thank you very much for being here. And by the way, thank you very much for all of you. And I turn you loose. Like I say, you have lots of unanswered questions. Please write it in. Remember AAM, Asian American Alliance of Marine. That's our group. Thank you very much. You have a good day.